Hello and welcome to day 2 of Elimination. Go ahead and pause the video, take about 5 minutes or less, try these 2 questions for the warm-up, and then check your work with this video. All right, so remember, solving a system with elimination, the name of the game is opposite coefficients. Same number, opposite sign. Just a heads up, in this video, I will be going a little quicker because to help keep the video short. So please make sure to pause, rewind, and make sure you get everything down from the video and from the notes that you see on your screen. So the solving elimination, opposite coefficients, we're looking for the same number, opposite sign for either the x's or the y's. So in number 1, I see that the x's have opposite coefficients. So those, when you add them together, they add up to 0. When you add up the rest of those terms, you get negative 3y equals 27. Solve for y, you get negative 9. Plug that back into either of the 2 original equations. I chose the second equation. Plug in negative 9, and then solve from there. So we end up with x equals 3, and our final answer then would be 3, comma, negative 9. Remember, x goes first. Just a quick review on substitution. So substitution, remember, you need one of the equations solved for one of the variables. So y equals negative 3x plus 1. We can substitute the negative 3x plus 1 in for the y in the other equation. And then when we substitute, we can then solve as usual. So we get x equals 2 for my first answer. We need to take that and plug it back in. I'm going to use the y equals equation, plug it in, solve, and we get y equals negative 5. So final answer, 2 comma negative 5. Again, just a reminder to pause the video, rewind, and make sure you're getting down everything that is written on your screen, should be written on your paper. Okay. A couple jokes for you. What do you call a fish with 2 knees? A two-knee fish. This graveyard looks overcrowded. People must be dying to get in there. There you go. There's your jokes for the day. Oh, you can see some of my things didn't animate. So we'll get that here in a second. We're going to continue with the notes. So find your note packet if you have not yet from last class period, elimination notes. We are going to jump to number 7. Number 7. And in this set of questions, we're going to get progressively harder. So we started with level 1, was kind of like in the warm-up where you can just add the 2 equations together and everything is good to go. The level 2 was when we had to multiply by a negative 1 in one of the equations. Well, level 3, or C in this case, level 3 is multiplying by something other than 1. So if I notice none of my variables have opposite coefficients, not even opposite signs. So they have either both negative or both positive. So I'm going to go ahead and focus on the x's because I noticed that if I were to multiply the top equation by negative 3, notice what happens. I multiply everything by negative 3, I get 9x minus 21 equals 48. Don't forget to multiply everything by whatever it is. Notice I slid the second equation over, and now I do have opposite coefficients. So when I add those 2 equations together now, I can then solve for y, and I get y equals negative 4. Okay, from here it's the same. I need to take that first answer. I need to go back to one of the 2 original equations, plug it in, and solve. So in this case, I used the top equation, and I went ahead and plugged in negative 4 for the y, and then solved for the x. Again, make sure you are pausing the video, writing down the work that you see, and going back for any re-explanation. So sometimes we can multiply just one equation by a number. Final answer, negative 4, negative 4. On number 8 and number 9, I'm going to have you take a moment and think about number 8. Think about which variable could we potentially eliminate by multiplying one of the equations by something. So if you notice the y's, right? The y's, I could easily get that y to be a 3, right? By multiplying by 3, but I also need to change the sign. So I need that sign to be a negative. So when I multiply by 3, I'm going to include a negative so that when I multiply that together, I end up with a negative 3 with the y, because then my y's will be opposite coefficients, right? Same number, opposite sign. Notice that was very easy to just multiply the top equation by negative 3. I could have tried to eliminate the x's, but there's nothing easy to multiply negative 2 by to get it to be positive 7. So in this case, the y's were easier to eliminate. And from here, add the two equations together. The y's cancel, so I'm solving for x first. So x equals 2. Take the 2, plug it back into either of the two original equations. I used the second one, the bottom one. I plug it in, and I'm solving for y. So adding 4 to the other side to get negative 15, divide by 3, get y equals negative 5. So final answer, 2 comma negative 5. So take a moment for number 9. See how far you can get. Pause the video, see how far you can get, and then you can check your work. All right, so number 9. Number 9, I notice once again, the y's, it would be fairly easy to get this bottom y to be equal to negative 14 simply by multiplying the whole equation by 2. So make sure you are multiplying every single thing, right? That's a common mistake, forgetting to multiply the constant on the other side. Make sure you're multiplying everything by that number. Once you do that, the y's are going to eliminate because I now have opposite coefficients. So add those equations together and finish solving. You get x equals positive 4. Be careful, little sign issues. Plug in 4. I use the top equation to plug 4 in for the x. Go ahead and go through the whole process of solving for y and get y equals negative 2. So final answer, 4 comma negative 2. All right, so moving on to the last level. So the last level of difficulty, and that is sometimes when we have to multiply both equations by a number. So sometimes we have to modify both equations before we can get opposite coefficients. So for number 10, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply the top equation by 9 and the bottom equation by 8. And if you notice, I'm kind of multiplying by the opposite number here. So I multiplied by the 8 in the bottom and the 9 in the top. And that's going to get me opposite coefficients here. Notice I did not include a negative because my signs for the y's are already opposites. So I don't need to change either of those two signs. Okay, so multiplying by positive 9 on the top, positive 8 on the bottom. Multiplying through carefully. If you need to, use a calculator, please. Right, avoid the little mistakes. Use a calculator. But from here, we're adding these two equations together. The y's cancel, and I get my final x value is x equals 1. I'm going to take that value and plug it back into one of the original equations. So I'm using the top equation. So the top equation, plug in 1. Again, multiply, and then start solving for y. So we get y equals negative 2. So x equals 1, y equals negative 2, 1 comma negative 2. In number 11, again, noticing that, first of all, notice there's nothing easy to multiply, for example, 3 by to get it to equal 5, or to get it to equal negative 5. There's nothing easy to multiply 4 by to get that to equal negative or positive 9. So that's why we have to multiply both equations by some numbers. They don't have to be the same numbers, right? So in this case, I'm going to multiply the top by negative 3 and the bottom by 5. So think about why this time I did include a negative. Both of these signs were positive. So I had to change one of them to be a negative. I could have stuck that negative with the 5. I just chose to put it with the 3. As long as you get one of them negative, one of them positive, those two values are going to then add up to 0. They're going to cancel out. And in this case, we end up with y left, and y equals 0. So I'm taking 0, plugging it back into one of the original equations. Solving for x, I get x equals negative 30. Sorry, negative 6 is my final answer. And then negative 6 comma 0 is my final solution to this system of equations. All right, these two, try these out, see how you can do, see how you do on them, and then you can check your work in the video. So number 12, I chose to eliminate the y's. So notice I multiplied the top by 7 and the bottom by 2. I chose the y's because they already have opposite signs. You could have eliminated the x's if you had multiplied the top by -10 and the bottom by 4. You could have there are alternate routes to take here, but in this case, I noticed that they already have opposite signs, so I just needed to multiply by positive numbers. So when I do that, I then can multiply through and then add my two equations together. I get x equals -1, and then we're back to the same place, right? Take that value, plug it into one of the original equations, simplify, solve, and I get y equals -5. So -1, -5. And then number 13. Number 13, again, notice both variables, x's and y's, they have the same signs. X's have positives, y's are negatives. So I'm going to have to include a negative somewhere. And in this case, I chose to just put it in the top. I multiply the top by -5 and the bottom by 3. Notice that's going to help me eliminate the x's. So the y's are going to be left over when I add those together. The y's left over, I get y equals -4. Take that, plug it back into one of the original equations, solve for x, and I get x equals -2. So final answer, -2, -4. Make sure you have those in the right order. We solved for the y first, but the y is the second part of your ordered pair. All right, these last two here, 14 and 15. You can pause the video and try these or just follow along in this video at this time. These actually turn out to be kind of quick because these are special cases. So let's see what happens. So in this case, I notice if I multiply the top equation by -2, that will get me opposite coefficients for both the x and the y's. Take a look at that. -4x and 4x, -6 and 6y and +6y. So when I add those two equations together, both of the x's and y's are gone. Those add up to 0. And then on the other side, it also adds up to 0. -10 and 10 adds up to 0. 0 is equal to 0. That is true, right? So notice the variables are gone. There are no more variables left. This is a true statement. So this is infinite solutions. This is one of those special cases. Okay. Number 15, if you take a look at number 15, notice if I'm trying to eliminate the x's or the y's, if I multiply the top equation by 3, once again, the x's and the y's now have opposite coefficients for both. So when I add those together, I end up with 0 equals 26. And in this case, 0 does not equal 26, right? That is not true. That is a false statement. So there's no variables left, right? No variables left. So at this point, because it's false, that means there's no solution. Okay, so for your practice, you are going to be working on a quote unquote around the room. You're actually just going to be in your chair and working through a PDF document. There are 8 questions. You need a clean sheet of paper. I would keep this as a paper that you could then put in your notes, but clean sheet of paper. You're going to write down the problem from the PDF, solve it, and then check your answer by scrolling down to see the next page, right? Try not to cheat too much. Don't look ahead too far. If you're stuck, take a look at the work in the PDF file, the PDF. And then once you're good with that one, move on to the next one. Don't be a knob, right? Kids not on board, don't do it. Make sure you're on task and try to get all 8 questions done as much as you can today before you leave. You will be turning in those 8 questions, whatever you have done, before you leave today. Okay, so you need to get those done and completed as much as you can, and then you need to turn those in to the guest teacher before you leave today. So time is yours to work. The only thing I have left is just some reminders. Week review number 3, due next week. Make progress in Khan Academy. Those are your goals for the next class period. You can see Khan Academy is listed a lot here. Some of you have done very little in Khan Academy. You need to figure your life out. Get Khan Academy done, get mission work done, make sure you're getting caught up. Okay. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you next week.